A commuter is running late in busy traffic. Full of stress, self-importance, and driving recklessly, he finds himself challenged by a young gang. The stalk begins and ends with disastrous results. Stop the Threat starts now. Hello and welcome to Stop the Threat. My name is James Towle. Our guest for this week's episode, Rob Pincus, nationally recognized firearm instructor. Kelly Muir, she is the author of a book called Instructor Revolution, and we'll hear more about that in just a minute. And Marc MacYoung, the co-founder of Conflict Communications. And I'm going to start with you, Marc, because tell me what conflict communications are. I need to know that.
Conflict communications started originally for police departments to help officers remain in emotional control of themselves. What we say is the first person you have to de-escalate is yourself. Now, once we were working on this, we began to look at it, and I looked at my partner and I said, do you think that this could work for regular people? And like, I use it for my wife all the time. And yes, we all get in conflicts.
Okay, all right. Kelly, tell me a little bit about that. The title kind of throws me off a little bit.
Yeah, well, Instructor Revolution was written specifically for instructor development as it pertains to the martial art world. So I wanted to write a book that would help martial art instructors be better at teaching their students. The book is specifically geared toward children, but it's teaching methodologies, it's concepts behind teaching. What surprised me was after the book was published, it reached such a much larger audience than I anticipated. So it was well received in the teaching community, the parenting community, which really surprised me. And I mean, there were even some firearms instructors that mentioned how much they appreciated the content of the book and how it helped them.
All right, well, that kind of leads me to what I wanted to ask Rob, because, you know, we've had a lot of conversations about the training you do, but we've never really established any point of how young or how old, and that has to come into the picture somewhere.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. You know, we deal mostly with people's interest, people's motivation, their physical ability on the range. So there is a low end of that, you know, and then of course at the upper end, there's not really a hard and fast rule. Some people are out of shape at 40, some at 60, some at 90. But what's most important is the focus and the maturity. And of course, when we're dealing with minors, we need that parental consent. We've had people as young as 14 take the class, and we just had a young man take it with his father right there on the line, and that's really the key, right? Obviously, if they're mature enough and physically capable and their parents say it's okay, bring them to class.
Okay. How about handicap?
We've worked with a lot of people with disabilities. So we've had people take full courses in the last year that were extreme close quarters, grappling and contact gunfighting classes with prosthetic legs. We have an instructor who's also disabled. We have had people with missing fingers, thumbs, whatever. What we always say is physical capability shouldn't be limited by the instructor's information, right? Okay. So your physical capability needs to be catered to when it comes to getting the job done.
Yeah, very good, because actually I'm beginning to read more and more about classes that are just focused on those folks alone who have a situation that they need to deal with in real life. And I was wondering whether good instructors were available, because that has to change your way of instruction somewhat as well.
What's really important to understand is we want anyone to come to the class, and when they come to the class, we're not going to segregate and say, okay, this is the one for people on crutches, this is the one for people in a wheelchair, this is the one for people with one hand. Everybody comes to every class, and it actually helps a lot of times people who are fully able-bodied to see some of the problems that are faced by people that are disabled, because it gives them an idea what they would do if they were injured.
Well, I think today's crime scene, and we're going to call it road rage, because basically it is a road rage situation, which we hear more about on the West Coast than we do the East Coast. But I think there's a lot to be learned here that could happen anywhere. And when we come back, I'll show you part one. Welcome back to Stop the Threat. Today's crime incident is a road rage incident. This is a typical road rage incident. Every one of us who have ever gotten in a car in heavy traffic and we needed to be somewhere, it seems like there's always something that puts a little pressure on us. So I'm going to show you part one of this, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. So let's look at part one.
Come on, man. Get over already. Get over. Crap. Yeah. Trying to drive right now. I got idiots all over the place. Yeah. I know I was supposed to be there 30 minutes ago. I'll be there. Yeah, right.
Flowers will be sent, cause this the main event. You heard what I said what I meant. In your head with a dent, cause this the main event.
You gotta be kidding.
You mess with me, you end up on the floor. You drop the box back, but you can't talk no more. Why?
What a fool do?
You have no answers. 12 rounds, fool. I'll be your private dancer. What's love got to do with it? Nothing.
Okay, you can rapidly see how this is going to turn into a situation. You want to start with this one, Rob?
Nobody makes fun of Tina Turner. I don't understand. Why would he do that? I thought the soundtrack was good. You could dance to it. I give it a thumbs up. Why? You know, this guy's out of control. I mean, he's aggravated, and he's now focused his attention on something he doesn't like, whether it was their music or their car or the way they dressed. Now he's going to be taking his anger out on somebody else instead of just focusing on driving. That's where he's lost it.
Comment?
Well, number one, he's driving while distracted. And that is a big issue. The cell phone, it's been shown that it's the equivalent of driving drunk. He's already upset. He's emotional. When we get emotional, we tend to make bad decisions. And it's not one bad decision, but it's rather a cascade effect of bad decisions.
You're exactly right.
Well, first of all, I will not even begin to pretend that I have not been very, very angry driving. I am easily distracted when I'm driving, so I think that's important to acknowledge because it's common,
Yes.
as so many folks experience that. He is angry. He's in a hurry. There's a lot of traffic. There's nowhere for him to go. But that anger absolutely is now being focused on the young men behind him.
So maybe we can get upset. Now, the question is, how upset are you going to become, and how long are you going to let that fester? And, I have to believe somewhere in what you're doing, Mark, do you address some of this road rage?
It's not just festering, it's snowballing. Because what happens is once we get into an emotional state, a different part of our brain takes over. And what seems like a perfectly logical decision at that moment, we don't see it in the context of what it really is. In other words, he's felt totally justified in cutting these guys off, flipping them off, and continuing. He was the aggressor. He'd become territorial. How dare they infringe on him, et cetera, et cetera. And you're talking basic anger issues. And once you're in that mindset, it is very easy to start making mistakes. Mistakes.
So how do we deal with that?
Again, you're getting into this thing of being aware of your own emotional state beforehand and keeping the runway in front is the term we like to use. Where, all right, I'm stressed, I'm tired, step back, breathe, get some emotional control, because what will happen is you'll react emotionally faster than you can consciously think.
Okay. I think this is not uncommon. I think it can happen to any of us.
Yes. Mhm.
And when you start to display some of that anger, it can lead to bad things.
Yes.
Now, I also have to say that in many, many cases, you can intimidate other people with your anger, and nothing happens.
Oh, absolutely.
Nothing happens.
We are
they just
accustomed
pass
to it.
away. I hate to say that, but that's true, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, it is, and there's a lot of pride here. And I know when I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, or they're too close to the back of my vehicle, I become very irritated because I feel, how dare they?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm already angry and I can't pull myself back, as you were mentioning, then it does snowball. And who knows what happened to this guy earlier in the morning? Who knows?
Sure.
Who
He might-
knows how he's trying to
Started off with an argument with somebody.
That's right.
At home.
And so
You
this
do
is
a lot
just
of
the icing on the
driving?
cake.
I do a lot of driving. I do a lot of assertive driving, hopefully not aggressive driving, but I've seen people make gestures towards me in the past as I was driving around. People get angry, right? Now, I get angry, obviously, too. Someone cuts me off, I get frustrated. I'm in a hurry. I'm usually running late. I always say if you're there early, you're not busy enough, right? So I set that timeline very close, and when I get aggravated, I start to lose control, right? Anybody can take a life. It's not that big a deal. You're in a 3,000-pound car,
Yes.
going that way is going to take a life. Everybody who steps out of the house wearing a gun, you could take a life. It's not hard. you have to be in emotional control. You know, it's that perspective that sometimes gets lost. Once you put that gun on, you now have more responsibilities to stay in control. Once you get behind the wheel, same thing.
And I think when we come back and I show you part 2, we'll see how this could evolve into a larger situation than you had imagined. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're going to watch part 2 now of Road Rage, and we are going to see what certainly took place in this incident and what could take place in an incident that you're involved with if you're not careful. Watch.
Get him! Where that fool go? Where'd he go? That way. He went that way. Let me lay on flat and straight. Bust the suckers' heads, that's my intent. Flowers will be sent. Cause this the main event. You heard what I said what I meant. You get it to the dent. Cause this the main event. Bust the suckers' heads, that's my intent. Flowers will be sent. Cause this the main event.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to start out by saying and reminding you one more time that this was a real crime. I'm also going to say that 20 years ago, I don't think this would have happened.
Yeah, it used to. It just didn't make the news.
I don't know. 20 years ago, I don't think there were young people out there cruising around who would have gotten so upset that they would have pursued an individual into a neighborhood to execute him. I don't think that would have happened 20 years ago. I could be wrong. I'm a Texas guy. But so today, and I think that's the point that I want to start with, today, these things are real.
Catastrophic events have always been real, and I agree, media has brought them more to our awareness. Did they happen as frequently? I don't know. You know, that's speculation. Does it seem as though more bad things happen now? It does. Yes. We have to hear about them. We see them. Really, at the end of the day, what is so important in this scenario is that regardless whether it happened a long time ago or whether it happened yesterday, it happens. It happens. And when people engage that, they have to understand that that is a possibility, that exactly this end result, this horrible end result, is a possibility.
I just think that this is very possible to go to a city, even out on the highway where you go, Rob, and find that there are people out there who are so angry that you could do something, and maybe not even as drastic as this individual did, that they would suddenly seize upon you and make you a victim.
Sure, absolutely, and I think that you know we've talked a lot already about the idea that, well, he shouldn't have cut him off, he shouldn't have let his anger get away from him, he shouldn't have lost control, all those things, but you know, one of the real horrors here is that incident usually gets reported as innocent man driving off the highway into a suburb gets shot by crazy gang kids, you know, when the reality is he's the one that was the first aggressor. He's the one that brought attention to himself. And, you know, what we do has consequences. We need to think about that. You know, I think that, you know, so we look at, okay, let's say that he was innocent. Let's forget about it. Who cares? He shouldn't have been followed by a bunch of angry kids. What do? We know he had a cell phone. We know he can drive and talk at the same time. Why wasn't he on as soon as he was worried about it? And maybe part of that was the embarrassment or fear of knowing he had been in the wrong in the first place. at the end of the day, sometimes you got to own that and just try not to get hurt once you got 3 kids chasing you, whether they have guns or not.
Okay. All right, Mark?
Well, I saw 3 mistakes, specifics. Number 1 is we teach don't ever run from danger, run to safety. That's a very important element because it shifts the mindset. Once he realized, oops, this is out of my control, this is a situation, you don't just run blindly. And his next mistake was where he stopped. I mean, stopping inside a car is just sitting inside a bullet magnet, right? This is bad combo there. You can keep on going. I mean, dial 911, say I'm being pursued, etc. Ask where the local police station is. I always tell people, if you're being pursued in a vehicle, drive into the police department parking lot. And it's amazing how many problems stop following you when you pull into the parking lot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. At least stay in the public eye.
Right.
Okay, I'm not crazy about going off into the hinterlands with 3 people chasing me who have threatened me like this. So I think that was a mistake. What's the matter with calling 911 and saying, hey, I'm being pursued? They will respond to that.
Yes.
Well, you would hope. I mean, I've certainly called 911 on drunk drivers and other situations, and it is not speedy response. So I think we need to be honest about that. You mentioned that he should have stayed on the highway. But at that moment, they bumped him with their vehicle.
No.
So if he,
I'm sorry.
I mean, how many of us want to go to the place? I mean, if somebody's irritating me on the road, I don't instantly think they could shoot me. If they're hitting me with their car, I would venture to say that my first response would be, let me get away from their car.
Right. I'm not saying stay on the road.
At that moment, that was my
Keep
bigger
on
danger.
going. Yes.
Right.
When they come to the point where they're bumping the car, and we shouldn't pass that up, when they're bumping the car and becoming that aggressive,
I would
you know now that you are going into a situation you're probably not prepared for. And when we come back, we'll have some closing arguments. Thanks for returning, folks. Stop the threat. We're dealing with a road rage issue, and it is probably more complicated than people give it credit for.
Well, you know, I think that the idea of taking accountability for the fact that this guy started it, but now he's in over his head is something that you brought out. And I like what Mark said about the idea of you don't just run away randomly, right? I mean, Executive Protection 101, you're operating an area, you got to know where the hospitals are, you got to know where the police are, you got to know where the fire station is. Go there. And if you don't know, at least
But who really knows that? I mean, I travel all the time, and I am telling you, I'm not going to pre-frame my travel and pay attention to where the hospital and the police station and the fire station are. I think that's ridiculous.
Okay, tell us what you would have done in that particular
I would
incident.
have.
They've banged your car now
I would
a
have
couple of
sought
times.
out the exit, and I would have tried to stay in a highly populated area. That would have been my strategy. But to say, I mean, it's very easy to say that we should all know where all those things are when we travel, but I just think that that's a silly statement because most people aren't going to know
Let
that.
me ask you this, why would you leave the freeway?
Because they have just shown me that they're willing to use their vehicle as a weapon. So I'm going to get away from them.
Are you going to leave the freeway?
I would definitely leave the freeway.
I use evasive driving, which means if I leave the freeway, it's going to be in such a way that hopefully I can make the off-ramp, he can't.
They're in a Mustang, you're in an Accord, though. Don't forget.
A dented Accord, which means
A dented Accord.
Right.
He's
But
probably
then
been in
again,
this situation
like I
a few
said,
times.
there are other.
I mean, the
the
exit's there,
situation
you gotta go.
dictates. You can move around the traffic. Sometimes you can get away. Sometimes you can't. And the situation dictates what you're going to
So
do.
let's assume that they followed you. Then what's your next move?
I love touch and goes, which is off, back on.
Yeah, I would be a little bit reluctant leaving the freeway unless I knew where I was exiting to.
Right.
You know, just to take the next exit, and I kind of put you in a situation that he found himself in.
Right.
And I mean, unless you're very aware of what's around you and you know where that exit's going to go, then if that exit's going to take me to a gas station that I know is very popular, then I might take it because I want to stay in popularity.
Most of the time it's a little bit of the hand on the hot plate theory. He just had a vehicle bump into his vehicle.
And he was
so
obviously scared
he's
by that.
responding to that. And if he has all the time to think about what is the strategy of exiting, I would be shocked. I think he was horrified. He knew he acted. you know, aggressively. He knew he was already in the wrong, and of course it's speculation. You know, he
Well,
didn't make it through.
it leads back to what you said earlier, though. It's almost a domino effect.
It is.
When that panic sets in,
Right.
you start making one bad decision after the other, and that's where that guy ended up
starts
in
in
the
anger,
neighborhood.
becomes panic. And, you know, the fact is we're strange here at this table because we actually do travel into areas we are not familiar with. But most people are somewhat familiar with their day-to-day routines. What I have problems with is the 911, this is my car, this is what they're in, this is the freeway we're on. You call and say, hi, I'm being chased by a bunch of guys with guns on the
That'll
freeway.
bring out law enforcement.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast they
Mark,
will respond.
I got to leave you because we're running out of time.
Right.
Okay. Viewers, I hope that you have seen something here today that makes a lot of sense to you. Send me your comments, and I'll see you again next week. Remember, the only gunfight you win is the one you don't get into. Be safe, be trained, be alert.